Hello and welcome back, everybody. You're listening to the Introverted Nerd Watches. I am your host, Reese, and it's Tuesday. So today I watched season 4, episode 3 of Fear the Walking Dead, Good Out Here. And Nick was not good out here. Um, this episode was wild. Before we get into it, let me tell you that you should subscribe to the podcast. It's available in Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Google Play, TuneIn, and wherever you get your podcast. So make sure you subscribe, rate and review, leave a 5-star review because that will really help me get exposure, and I'll read all the 5-star reviews on the podcast. You should follow me on social media. Follow me personally on Twitter at the Ms. Introvert. Follow the podcast on Twitter at Nerdtrovert Pod. And yes, that is a different Twitter handle than last week because I keep trying to find the right Twitter handle. I don't know. I like Nerdtrovert Pod right now. It could be different next week, so stay tuned. Follow me on Instagram at the Introverted Nerd and like the Facebook page at facebook.com/the Introverted Nerd. And you can send me feedback about all of the crazy things happening on Fear the Walking Dead. Send it to the Introverted Nerd at gmail.com. So there was a shocking end to this episode. Nick is dead. Nick Clark, the person that we started the show with, is dead. You guys, really? Oh my goodness. I couldn't believe it. It was just so it was shocking. I was so ready for the Nick and Morgan, bonding fest, and we got some of that in this episode, but I was so ready for Morgan to be annoyed, really. I was ready to be annoyed with Nick, with Morgan teaching Nick his all life is precious bullshit that he learned from the cheesemaker. I was really like, I was going to go off at the end of this episode. When Morgan gave Nick, his cheesemaker book and was telling him that all life is precious and they could talk about it. And then Nick up and died. And I was kind of sad, like, oh man, Nick. But then I was kind of happy because I was so not interested in Morgan's bullshit about his all life is precious stuff. So we dodged a bullet. I dodged a bullet. Nick had to take a bullet so that I could dodge it. And it's all about me. So whatever. Poor Nick though. It turns out the actor Frank Delane wanted to leave the show. So this is not a situation like Chandler Riggs where he was like unceremoniously fired or his contract wasn't extended or something like that. He wanted to leave the show. He wants to do other things and he misses home. He's from England, so he didn't want to be doing the show anymore. So I guess there's nothing the show could have done except maybe recast. But Nick is, he deserved to go out. Like, he deserved to be killed. You can't recast somebody like who is as visible as Nick is in this show. Like, one of the posters for one of the seasons, what's it, season 2 or 3 or something like that, is Nick. Nick is like the prominent person in that poster, so you can't just replace the character. So R.I.P. Nick. And let's just get into this because there's a lot of stuff going on. Madison still not in present time, and I feel like they're baiting us. They want us to think that Madison is dead. Um and this episode, if Nick didn't like, this episode was really adding to it because they were having um all of the flashbacks in this episode were of Nick and Madison. It was Nick having flashbacks to this one specific day with Madison. Um, so they want us to think that she's dead, which I was thinking, in the first. I was thinking in the first few episodes, okay, Madison is dead. They're going to do this big reveal at either the mid-season finale or in the finale where they reveal that Madison is dead. But now it just seems way too obvious that she's dead. So now I'm thinking there's no way she can be dead because it seems so obvious that that's what they want us to think. So I don't know. It's a toss up. Email me and tell me what you think because it's crazy, or tweet me. So should we start with the flashbacks? Let's start with the flashbacks because it's mostly Nick and Madison. And it's one day, like I said. It's they're burning, and they're digging up and burning, like everybody in the camp is digging up and burning all of the crops that were ruined by the weevils. But I don't know how long it's been since the vultures arrived. So they're still throwing this stuff away. They're still burning this the crops and everything. So I want to know how long it's been since they have been sitting out there in the front of the place, because Madison tells Nick that she's going to go on a run because they need to find more food, and Nick tells her that he's going with her. So I'm like, okay, this has to be some extended period of time, because in the last episode we saw that Nick drove out of the was driving out of the camp, and he was having PTSD flashes. He could not handle being outside of the camp. Even the 10 or 15 feet he made it from the front gate, he could not handle being out there. So, but he says to Madison, I want to go with you, and I'm like, wow, that's big. So when they're getting ready to go, they're driving out, and Mel stops them, and it's just it's this really cordial thing they have going on. There's an undercurrent of, like, not menace, I don't want to say, but intimidation. I think there's an undercurrent of, like, intimidation with all of their interactions that we see. And the vultures are just dicks. They're constantly taunting, specifically Nick, but they're taunting Madison too. They say things when they see Madison and Nick go out, when Mel stops them, he's saying to them, it's not looking that good around here. It's just this constant, like, trying to psych them out is what I called it in my notes. It's like he's trying to psych them out. Like, if he continues, he's trying to break their will, is what I think he's trying to do, without being too overt about it. And he's telling Madison that there's not a lot of food around here anymore. You've been scavenging for a while. You haven't found anything. And she's like, we got this. We can handle this. Don't worry about us. You worry about yourself. And then he talks to Nick, and he's like, Nick, good on you for getting back up on the horse. And he's talking about Nick leaving the camp. And it's awkward because it's like, oh, he knows all this because uh Charlie told him, and they've probably been listening on the radio. So Nick is like ignoring him, and then he picks up the book that Luciana left for Charlie last week, and he says, you probably didn't know that Charlie doesn't read children's book, so here, you take this back, and he throws the book at him, and that's Madison and Nick drive off. But I'm like, they're really doing this. They're like really like having this back and forth about this little girl. And Charlie and Ennis are right behind Mel when he's talking to Madison and Nick. So they're in the camp when Madison and Nick leave. And I don't understand why Madison and Nick are so attached to this little girl, because when they drive off, they're talking, and Nick is like, she was never with us. Was she? She was always going to go back to them. We never had a chance with her, did we? She was never going to stay. And Maddie's like, we'll get her back. And I'm like, what? You'll get her back? Why do you want her back? She's not related to you. She wasn't even with them that long, because we find out later on in the episode that Charlie was only with them for 2 weeks. So that's what makes their attachment to her even more bizarre, because it's like, when she was with you, she wasn't giving you a whole lot of information. She spent all that time basically asking them questions and spying on them. And they didn't know that at the time, but it's not like, I can't imagine that they formed the kind of bond that you'd think they have based on how Madison and Nick are reacting to this little girl. So I don't know. So during this, Nick asks Madison how she keeps going. How does she keep going when everything seems so bad? And she tells him, and this shocked me, that she's trying to look for the positives. No matter what it is, when you see a billboard that's kind of funny, or, you see flowers, anything that is kind of positive, just looking for the positive in everything. And it's like, whoa, hold on a minute. Who is this person that's calling herself Madison Clark? Because I don't recognize her. This is not the woman who I watch for a season and a half make every bad situation worse. This is not her. Madison, where did Madison get this rosier outlook? I don't know. She's so different. What happened between the dam collapse and getting to the baseball stadium that completely changed her outlook and kind of changed her personality in my mind? She just seems so different. This is not the Madison that I remember. It's wild, yo. It's just, I don't know who she is. And we don't see her. So where the hell is she? Is she still this way in present time? Or is this whole like positive attitude of hers going to disappear the second that her camp falls? I don't know. I need to see. I want to know where Madison is. I want this to end right now. Like, tell me where she is right now. Right now, Fear the Walking Dead writers, tell me. I won't tell anybody. Just tell me. You don't have to tell anybody else. Just tell me. So Madison and Nick are driving around for a while. Apparently they go to like 8 places, and at the ninth place they show up Ennis, who is the dude that drives the El Camino. He's Mel's brother. Ennis and Charlie are already there. And Nick like stupidly asks him, like, are you following us? And it's like Ennis is like, rightfully, we got here first. Like, how can we be following you if we got here first? Turns out they are, well, not following them. They're tracking them because Madison is talking on the radio. The guy that we saw from was it last week? I don't know. One of the other people at their camp, the old guy at their camp, is asking her if they had any luck. And she's saying, no, we haven't had any luck. We're going to keep checking. We're checking this ninth place. And when she sees Ennis, she turns off the radio, but you can still hear the guy talking because Charlie walks out of the house, and it turns out they've been listening to all of the Clark's conversations. And it's like, really, Madison? Nobody thought that. Did everybody like not realize that Charlie was giving the vultures information over the radio? Like, why would you guys continue to use these walkie-talkies? I don't understand. It makes zero sense to me. It's like, of course. I mean, I knew that the vultures weren't as like, we're just going to sit around and wait for you guys to die, because that makes zero sense. I knew that it had to be more than just that. So I don't know if they went to if they stopped at every place that Madison and Nick were going before they got there, but they're at this house. They clean it out completely. And Charlie walks out. It's like a really awkward moment because she's looking at Madison and Nick like, oh shit, like, I fucked you guys over. I didn't want to have to see you and talk to you anymore. I just wanted to do my thing and go back to my people. But Ennis is over there kind of taunting Nick. He's telling Nick, like, he's eating some of the food that they found, and he's telling Nick, like, we told you Charlie knew how to find a gold mine. And Nick is starting to talk to Charlie, and he's like, Charlie, you don't have to do this. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. And Ennis gets mad at that. He's like, hold on. She's not doing anything she doesn't want to do. She's here because she wants to be. Stop acting like you know her. She was only with you for 2 weeks. I'm the one that found her, and I'm the one that taught her how to survive. So Ennis is like Charlie's dad. And that's how I've chosen to think about it. Like, Ennis is like her father. He's the father figure. He's the one that we see her with most of the time. Even when she was, in the background, it was her and Ennis together, talking to each other. So, excuse me. So it's weird to me that these two grown ass men argue about the affections of this little girl. Like, and this is like, Nick is like, don't you really want to be with us, Charlie? I mean, he didn't say that, but this is basically how I'm taking it. Like, Charlie, these people are mean. Look what they're doing. Don't you really want to be with us nice people? And Ennis is like, hey, stop talking to my girl right now. She wants to be with us. Like, you don't know her like that. It's like, stop it, you guys. I wonder if it's a symptom of Madison and Nick's addictive personality that they sort of lashed onto this little girl. I mean, and Nick seems a little more attached than Madison, but maybe it's just because I don't know. But Nick seems a little bit more attached than Madison. Nick seems a little more hurt by it than Madison. But they both seem committed to getting Charlie to be back with them. So it's like this custody battle over this little girl who's already decided where she wants to be. Um, and I don't get the sense that Charlie hates the Clarks or anything. I don't think that she took pleasure in sort of fucking them over. Um but I don't think that she was as attached to them as they seem to be to her. Uh she went in there to do her job and she did her job and they happen to be nice people. So, she didn't hate them, but I don't think she was very attached to them. She doesn't seem very like she was very attached to them. Um Especially since she's the one that kills Nick at the end of this episode. So even if she was kind of even if she did like them, she didn't like them after at the end of this episode. So Nick Nick is really riled up. Ennis says something else that fires him up, and he puts a knife to Ennis's throat and actually cuts him a little bit. And then, Madison has to pull him away. And Madison and Nick end up having a talk. And Nick is really beating himself up because he doesn't like the way he behaved in front of Charlie. He's mad at himself for losing it in front of her. And he says that he never he didn't leave the stadium, or he wasn't like confined he didn't confine himself to the stadium because he was scared of what was outside of the zombies. He stayed inside because he didn't like the person he became when he was outside. um which I'm like, okay, but you were having like flashes of what happened at the dam. Like he was having like legit PTSD flashbacks. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't think that really aligns. Um like he was legitimately um staying in because he couldn't get himself to leave, but he seemed fine in this episode. It didn't seem like a PTSD thing. In this episode, he just sort of made the decision to leave with Madison, and it was like, well, okay. And Madison did make the comment when Lucy was telling her, like, isn't it weird that Nick won't leave? She says, you didn't see him when I found him. So it's like, well, I don't know. What was he like when she found him? That matters a little bit less to me now that Nick is dead. So I'm not really looking to get a bunch of Nick backstory. Now that, he's dead. I don't care about it now that he's dead. Um, so, what else he also tells Madison that being outside made him feel more trapped than he did when he was actually confining himself to the stadium. So Nick's got problems, um back in this time. And so Madison takes him, they continue to drive around and they find a field of bluebells, and Madison is telling him, like, this is one of the positives that I found. Like, this is a positive. This is one of the things that I found, that we found together. And Nick lays down in the field of bluebells, and that's actually the last shot of the episode, is Nick laying in these field of bluebells. And so that is all of the flashbacks. That is all of Madison that we got in this episode. It's just this day with Nick. And these were all Nick's flashbacks throughout the episode. So, they're all like, little sort of thrown in throughout the episode when Nick gets another concussion at the beginning of the episode, and that's when we get the first flashback, and so on and so forth. So, they at the beginning of this episode in the current timeline, they crash Al's truck. Well, not crash, but they drive off the road. They drive into a ditch. Her truck gets stuck, and Al, John, and Morgan get the upper hand over the Clarks. It's like, really, you guys? There were four of you. You're all like in good physical health. Morgan is over here with a bad leg and he won't kill anybody, and they still got the best of you. Oh, these Clarks. It's like they've been in the apocalypse just as long as Rick's group at this point, and they're still sort of amateurish. It's like, oh, you guys. Oh, you're not about that life right now. You're just, I don't know. They're just not about that life. And so they, Al is telling them like, hey, she's going on and on about how she wants to know their stories. She needs to, she wants to tape them and get their stories. But now they have to help her get her truck unstuck. Get her truck out because she refuses to leave her truck. And and they're like, well, untie us and we'll help you. And Strand goes a few times. Strand says, a deal requires an act of faith. So he says this a couple of times to her. And the act of faith this time is like, hey, you have to, if you want our help, you have to untie us. So that's what Al does. And they go off to search for a way to pull this truck out of the ditch and to get gas and all that. And so Nick stays with Morgan. And, this was the start of it. This is what I thought it was going to be. Nick and Morgan, they're very, Nick was a drug addict. Morgan was a murdering addict. This was the start of it. I was ready for the Nick and Morgan show to begin. And they actually have a nice moment. You see the moment that we've seen in all of the promos where, Morgan hits Nick with the stick and trips him with it and everything. And then they share, it's a cool little callback to a moment that Morgan had with Michonne where Nick and Morgan share a peanut butter protein bar. And it's a nice moment that a callback to Clear and to season 6 where Morgan confronts Michonne about stealing his protein bar. So that's nice. That's always a nice moment. Morgan and Michonne, their protein bar thing was funny. That Morgan was like crazy out of his mind, but he remembers this goddamn protein bar. So Morgan is like really stupidly doing his Aikido in the middle of the road, and he happens to see Ennis's El Camino, and he runs down and he tells Nick like, hey, we gotta hide. And Nick is like, what's going on? And he sees the El Camino and he sees red. He can't think of anything else. He needs to get out to get to that El Camino because he wants to kill Ennis. Now, I want to know why Nick has this level of anger. Because can it just be for the way they, did their camp? Like, we don't know exactly what happened at the camp. So, we don't know whether the vultures became more aggressive. But at first I thought it was because, they had Madison or maybe they killed Madison. But Nick never says anything. So it's like if they had Madison, it would have he wouldn't have had to fight with Morgan. He could have just said, "Hey, these are the people that have my mother. I need to I need to go to them." But no, Nick just he went crazy. He started he and Morgan started fighting, and he knocked Morgan down. He hit him in his bad leg a few times, and then he got a hammer and he starts running after a car. It's like, Nick, what do you think you're going to do? Running on foot after a car. I mean, I get that you think that you have like a superpower because you can walk amongst the zombies, but you can't, you're a human being. You cannot chase a car down the street. Stop it. But he runs off anyway. Nick was a real dick. He wouldn't even throw Morgan's stick down. Morgan is like telling Nick, like, "Hey, throw me my stick," because during their fight, they turned the horn on. They like fell on the horn, and the horn is like blaring and it's drawing zombies. And Nick wouldn't even throw him his stick. So, but I want to know why they didn't just turn the horn off. But it's like you fell on the horn, you turned it on, so just press it again and turn it off. But they didn't do that. They didn't even try to do that. So I'm guessing that maybe it was a case where it was stuck, but we don't even see them try to turn that horn off, or at least Morgan. Morgan was the one that was left there. He doesn't try to turn it off. He just ends up walking off. Nick doesn't make it very far. He stops in a field he sees a little patch of bluebells, and he picks one of the bluebells, and he gets sort of swarmed by zombies, and Morgan ends up saving him. So it's like these Clarks are just as inept as ever, like just can't stop getting themselves in trouble. Especially Nick, specifically Nick, can't stop getting himself in trouble. So, what happens next? Nick and Morgan start talking, and Nick had already, when Morgan was doing his Aikido in the road, Nick was looking through their stuff. He was going through Morgan's stuff, going through his bag and everything. He went through Al's stuff, and he found the camera, and he watched Morgan and John's videos. And so when he starts talking to Morgan, he's like, so, hey, tell me about what happened. Like, why did you save me? Tell me about what happened to you. And he's just asking a lot of questions, and Morgan gets agitated, and he's like, no, I'm not going to answer any questions. And I'm not telling you about my life. And, Nick wants to know why. They just have like this back and forth. And then we cut over to the other group, and Strand is starting to question Al. And Strand wants to know why Al wants why she wants to ask them questions, why she wants to record all of this. He's puzzled by her. He wants to know why she wants their stories and why it matters if no one will be around to see all of this stuff. And Al, she does a lot of deflecting, and it's kind of annoying because it's like, why can't you tell them why you want to? I mean, obviously it's going to be something really personal to her, but it's kind of this, it just feels really repetitive, the way what she's doing. It's like, obviously your whole spiel is not really inviting people to do this, because John Dory is the only one that was sort of like, okay, we'll do, I'm willing to answer your questions. And it's only because he's been, he wants to talk to anybody at this point. He's been by himself for such a long time. He's happy to talk to anyone. So I don't I was really interested in her, in the idea of her and her sort of being the person that's recording history. But she's not giving a whole lot of reason for why this is what she needs to do, and why anybody else should buy into it. So she ends up telling Strand that truth matters, even if the truth is only seen by her. And it's like, I mean, okay, girl. And when Strand keeps pressing it, she deflects again, and she asks about a scar that he has on his hand, and Strand sees right through that, and he's like, let's stay on topic. Um Tell me why you want to do this. And I like that. I like that somebody called her on it. I mean, Morgan kind of called her on it, but he was not really interested in getting into like the nitty gritty with her. But I like that Strand is like, you know what, girl? I'm clear headed and I see right through what you're doing. I don't buy the bullshit. And and actually Lucy is says that too. She's like, yeah, this is really cute. She survived because she's a badass, but I don't buy into this bullshit about you're interested in truth. Like, come up with another story because nobody's buying that. And I don't really buy it either because it's like you're asking people these questions and you're like, who knows if they're telling the truth? She's asking a lot of personal questions. So um it's not a bigger picture thing. It's sort of all of these personal stories. So, who knows how much of it is the truth? How does Morgan's story, when Morgan is finally interviewed, he tells her about a king. He tells her about the kingdom and Ezekiel and his tiger. And it's like, who would believe that? Who would really believe that? Unless she's going to get multiple accounts that Ezekiel and Shiva actually existed. It's just a story. It could be some made up shit that somebody told her. So if you don't know what's the truth, then you're just recording a bunch of bullshit for people. But hey, if that's what you want to do, if that's how you want to spend your time in the apocalypse, that's fine, I guess. So once they get back to the truck, they see that it's surrounded by zombies, and they're worried about Nick, but Al and John is worried about Morgan, but Al is like, fuck this. I'm not going to find anybody. We need to get my truck free. And Dory is trying to talk to her like, hey, Morgan is out there. He's hurt. He needs our help. It's just a truck. And she's like, no, I have important stuff in there. I'm not leaving this truck. And it's like, wait, because I was really like, is there something really important in there? Does she have like some really serious, like important stuff that she cannot leave? Because it's not like the truck is going anywhere. They had to bring another truck in order to pull that thing out of the ditch. And it's surrounded by zombies. I'm guessing that your truck and all the stuff in it will still be there by the time you go and find Morgan and Nick. This was not the type of thing where it's like, I can't leave my stuff, like I can't leave my car here unattended. Somebody might steal it. It's like, nobody's taking your shit. But she won't leave. So Alicia and Strand, stay with her, decide to help her get her truck out of the ditch. And Lucy and John go to find Morgan and Nick. And I like the conversation that happens between Lucy and John because they start talking. And when the group left Nick and Morgan alone, Nick tells Alicia to make sure Lucy comes back. And John notices that and he talks to Lucy and he's telling her, he asks her about it and she just looks at him at first and he explains to her, he's like, it's been a long time since I've spoken to anybody. So I'm going to talk to you so that I don't start talking to myself. And I'm like, oh my God, I love this guy. I love him so much. He's my freaking favorite. Like he needs to, I was, I love his honesty about, hey, I need to talk to you so that I don't start talking to myself. That's just like that's some real shit that I can completely I just like his whole attitude. Uh and he continues to talk to her. He's like, so why would he be scared that you wouldn't come back? And she explains to him that she left him before and she didn't return. And he asks her, when you didn't return, was it because you didn't love him anymore? And she says, I didn't return, but I always loved him. And it's kind of sweet and kind of sad that that John, he's looking for like reassurances like anywhere because um Laura left him. I guess she left him. Um I don't I don't remember whether he's always thought that she left or whether she, something happened to her, and um I don't know whether it's always been clear that she left him, but I do like this, this was just a short little conversation. It was a couple minutes between he and Lucy, but I liked it. That he's looking for a reassurance, like maybe there's a chance that Laura still loves him, or even if she left him, maybe she still loves him. So uh I like that and I appreciate it. So Al, Alicia, and Strand are all, there trying to figure out how they're going to get her car out of this ditch. And she's like, she's just, she refuses to move. She seems like almost frozen there. Like she's not making a move to try to get her, she's not making a move to try to get her own truck out of there. It's not like she's doing something stupid, like running down to the truck that's surrounded by zombies, but she refuses to leave the spot. So Strand is like, okay, here's the deal. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to help you move your truck. And what you're going to do for us in return is you're going to take us back to where you found the flag, and you're going to drive us to find these people, the vultures, I assume he's talking about. And while we're doing that, we will answer all your questions, on tape. And that's just how it's going to be until the end. And that's the agreement. And they get her truck out and they go to find the Nick and Morgan and all of them. So while Nick and Morgan eventually find Ennis in the El Camino, and he's in like this place with a bunch of it's not storage units. They look like, I mean, it's like maybe it's a small farm and it's just like storage on a farm, but there's like silos and everything. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's a lot of storage. I guess this is where the vultures are storing all of the shit they take from people. But Ennis is there. He seems like he's alone. And I don't know whether he was unpacking all of the stuff that he had or whether he was getting stuff to put into his truck. But Morgan is the one that sees him first. And he and Morgan just have this weird thing. They see each other, they look at each other, and it's just sort of like if two people were just walking down the street now. It wasn't aggressive or anything. Ennis tells Morgan, like, get out of here, old man. And that's when Morgan tells him, you need to go now. get out of here, because he knows that Nick is on his way. And he has already told Nick that he doesn't kill because he believes all life is precious, blah, blah, blah. And um he's like, get out of here, get in your car and get out of here. And that's when Nick shows up. And it's so funny because Nick walks up and Ennis turns around and he sees Nick and he's like, oh shit, hey Nick. And he's greeted him like he's like this long lost friend. And I want to know how long it's been since the fall of the stadium, and how long it's been since the vultures have seen them, because he seemed genuinely surprised to see Nick. So how long has it been? And it's wild because he was just like, oh shit, hey Nick, like they were old friends. Like, oh man, it's so good to see you. I haven't seen you since we harassed you and watched your community fail. It's so good to see you. It's so good to catch up with you. It's just wild. So Morgan tries to hold Nick back from Ennis because Nick is just like, he's out of it now. He wants to kill him. And he tells Morgan, like, are you prepared to kill me to stop me? And of course, Morgan isn't. So Morgan is like, you know what? Whatever. Morgan walks away and Nick goes up to Ennis. Ennis is in one of these buildings, one of these storage buildings. And he gets to attacking and he attacks him with his hammer. They fight in this storage room. And eventually Nick gets the upper hand and he pushes Ennis onto this deer antler head, and Ennis gets impaled on these deer antlers. And he doesn't just fall, Nick pushes him down on the antlers to make sure he dies. So Nick murders Ennis. And I'm sure that's going to make the rest of the vultures really upset. So the thing that I want to know about the vultures is if they carry guns, because it just seems really wild and brazen for people that behave the way that they do to not have guns as protection. Because when we see Mel and Ennis and all of them in the flashback, I don't remember seeing them with any guns. Ennis doesn't have a gun on him when Nick attacks him. He does have a knife, but it's like, it just seems really crazy that people that live their lives the way that they do, the way that they go up to camps, the way they show up to camps with this like show of like force and intimidation with all these trucks, and sit around camps like waiting for them to die. It just seems so weird for those kinds of people not to have guns. And maybe I just missed it and they do have guns, but it seems weird that Ennis would be walking around by himself and not have a gun. And maybe it's just sort of being comfortable that they think that they've sort of taken over this area, so he can just walk around, like he does, like he would if this was just regular life and he was just walking around his house, but clearly not. Nick says, you did the wrong thing. So Ennis is dead. Nick has his blood all over his hands, and Morgan decides to come back. And when he sees Nick, he's like, you know what? I'm going to tell you about the questions you were asking me earlier. I'm going to answer them. And he tells him, my wife died, my son died, and my friends died. And that's how I lost myself. But I met a person that helped me find myself. And he gives Nick the book called The Art of Peace that the cheesemaker gave him. And the cheesemaker told him all life is precious. And he's trying to explain this whole thing. He's trying to indoctrinate Nick. He's proselytizing and he's telling Nick, you can join my cult too. Just read this book and we can talk about it later. Wink, wink. And I'm like, oh, really? I cannot deal with more all life is precious Morgan. It is so annoying and it just feels so unnecessary. It's like, I get it. You don't want to kill people. That's fine. I don't feel like that can be in the apocalypse. I don't think all life is precious and I'm never going to kill anybody at all, whether they try to kill me or not. I'm not going to kill them. I don't think that can be your philosophy if you want to live with another group of people, because especially if you want to live with a group of people, it just feels so mad. It feels mad irresponsible. And sort of, it feels like a disregard for the other people that live with you. Like, Morgan was doing some crazy shit when he was in Alexandria, like saving the wolf, in Alexandria. It's refusing to kill people, the wolves, when they were attacking Alexandria. That was just like some crazy, like, I would have been okay if somebody shot Morgan in the head type of shit. I was so mad at him when he was doing that type of stuff. So yeah, and I don't want him passing that on to other people. I want other people to call him out, to say, hey, we get it. You don't have to kill people all the time, but you have to be prepared to kill people sometimes, especially when they're attacking your group. Ugh. Let me just move on from it because I'm just going to be pissed all over again. So, the other group shows up. They find Morgan and Nick. Nick is over off on the side reading the book that Morgan gave him. And when he sits down on a step and he takes out the bluebell that he took earlier from the bluebell patch, and he's looking at it and he starts thinking about Madison again. And then all of a sudden he gets shot. There's a shot that rings out and Nick, you can tell that he's been hit. But he doesn't have like a huge reaction. And then he looks down and there's blood. He touches his chest and there's blood on his hand. And he looks back up and there is Charlie. Charlie's standing there holding the gun. And that's Charlie is actually Nick's final word. And he falls on the ground and Charlie looks shocked. So I'm guessing that this was her first kill. This was the first time she killed a human being. She looks shocked. She's like frozen for a moment, and then she starts running away when Alicia and Lucy show up. Alicia tries to chase after her, but I'm not sure. She sees a person running away, but I'm not sure whether she recognizes that person as Charlie. So, but Nick dies in that moment. It's really like gross. He starts blood starts coming out of his mouth and he basically drowns on his own blood. In that moment. That seems like a horrible way to die, to be coughing up blood like that and to not be able to, like, to drown on your blood. It looked gross. But and Alicia was really good at this moment. Like, it was Alicia, Strand, and Lucy that were trying to like stop the blood flow, trying to save him. And I mean, obviously nothing works, but Alicia was the most, and I guess that makes sense since she was his sister. But Alicia sold that moment. of, her grief was really like palpable in that moment. So, um, my voice is like getting crazy. It's going bad. We gotta end this in a second. But so she was really good. Nick is dead, and um Morgan, Al, and John are, they're standing right there. They're looking at this, and it's like, ooh, like, what do you do? Like, Morgan is like kind of hurt. You can see on his face, he doesn't know Nick that well. So we're not going to get a crazy lose himself kind of Morgan. But you can tell that he's sad that this is how it turned out for Nick, because he told Nick earlier in the episode, this is not going to turn out the way that you think it is. And it didn't, because I don't think Nick thought that Charlie was going to murk his ass. So what is going to happen with Charlie now? If Madison is alive, what's she gonna do now that Nick is dead? Because Nick is to her what Carl was to Rick. Well, maybe that's overstating it a bit, but we knew. I mean, Madison loved her some Nick. She loved Nick more than anybody else at certain points in this show. More than her other kid, more than anybody. She loved Nick. So if she's alive, what the hell is she going to do? She's going to flip out if she's still alive. What happens to Charlie? Are we going to have a situation where Lucy or Alicia kill this little girl? Because so I was watching some YouTube videos of reactions to Nick's death, and I saw a lot of them were mad at Charlie, and I completely understand that. I personally am not mad at her because, well, I look at it from the standpoint of Nick killed her father, or her father figure. And she came back and she killed the person to avenge, her father. So, this is what you get, right? This is what Nick was trying to do. He killed Ennis to, I don't know why, but for what I'm going to assume that is for what Ennis did to his family. Maybe killing Madison, or maybe getting Madison killed, but something to, avenge his family. So, and I'm going to say that Charlie was doing the same thing. They're her family. Ennis was her father figure. The vultures are her family. No matter how much, Nick and Madison dislike that, that's who they are to her. So, it is what it is. So I do want to know, what the hell are we going to get a look at the flowers moment for Charlie? Is Charlie going to be dead by the end of the season? I don't think she can come back to this group though. She murdered Nick. I don't think she can come back to the group and just, be the little girl that everybody takes care of. She murdered someone. She is, I don't know, that's apocalypse adult, right? Once you murder someone, you're an apocalypse adult now. So I don't know, some wild shit is going on. I want to know more about these vultures, because I'll say right now, they're a better version of the garbage people from The Walking Dead. They are more emblematic of what the garbage people's philosophy was supposed to be. The garbage people were supposed to be the people that they don't bother. So, but turns out that they bothered a lot, and they took a lot. So they didn't live up to who they were supposed to be. But the vultures so far are the people that take and don't bother. The problem I have with them is that they aren't very scary right now. So I have to believe that there's more to them than they're just going to sit around and wait for this community to fail, because it seems so counterproductive to what they want. They if they want to take all of these people's stuff, it just seems weird that you would let them use up all of their supplies and then come and take like the crap that they didn't get a chance to use, or whatever. It just seems like not what you would want to do. But I'm willing to keep going with this, but um I do I need to know more about damn near everybody, especially Al. Where's Madison? Madison and Naomi, because Naomi hasn't been in the present either. So is Naomi dead? Did she leave? Is Naomi even a good guy? I know she did have like this sort of uh like a Carol feel. Not that she was like a badder woman or anything, but that she sort of had this like scared woman kind of thing, trying to survive type thing. So, you know, I don't. Maybe she's not a bad guy. I'm not a big fan of hers, but um, I don't know. And the preview for next week is Naomi. That's her name, right? I was calling her Dharma last week, but I think her name is Naomi. Naomi telling Alicia that they can't stay at the camp for much longer. So um I don't know, but Nick is out of here. And that's a big deal. Um I do want to know how that's going to affect things going forward. Um, you know, Lucy is back, but Lucy, the only connection I had to Lucy was the fact that she was with Nick. Um, so what happens to her now? Like, how is she relevant anymore? Um, maybe she's relevant because she's one of the only people that still goes on the Talking Dead. I believe, was she on for the last 2 weeks? Um, she's always on the Talking Dead, so um maybe that's why they'll keep her on the show. Like, she's one of the actors that doesn't mind going on the Talking Dead all the time. So maybe that's how Lucy will keep her job. Um, let me get out of here because my voice, my throat is starting to hurt. And so that is it, you guys. The next episode is on Throwback Thursday. It's Saved by the Bell, the Saved by the Bell rewatch. So if you're watching along, Saved by the Bell with me, the next episode is going to be on from Hulu is season 4, episode 1, The Last Dance. That's how it's classified on Hulu. Now, if you're watching it some other place, I don't know how they have it lined up, but on Hulu, it's this episode is titled The Last Dance. It's season 4, episode 1 of Saved by the Bell. So, follow me all over social media. I'm on Twitter, at the Ms. Introvert. And you can follow the podcast on Twitter at NerdTrovertPod. I changed my Twitter handle again. Until I find something I like, I will keep changing it. On Instagram, I'm at The Introverted Nerd, and like the Facebook page at facebook.com/The Introverted Nerd. And you can send your feedback to theintrovertednerd@gmail.com. So until next time, everybody, later.